Over the last 11 years, I've lived in 4 different countries, worked at 6 different cities, 7 different agencies, all within Dentsu Aegis Network. And I picked up a few things along the way by asking questions to people I respect, by making lots of mistakes, and by learning along the way. So take notes, because your memory sucks. We all like to think that we have a good memory. But guess what? You don't. A group of psychologists actually wanted to prove this out. Lecture students who were taking notes, and another group of students in a lecture who weren't taking notes. And both groups remembered roughly about the same amount of lecture content, which is about 40%. Those that did take notes, they were able to remember more important, more relevant information. Because the sheer act of writing, your brain actually goes through a process where it actually encodes that information. Be curious and proactive. Now, if you think about all of the inventions, all of the breakthrough innovations since the dawn of time, flints to start fires, or the wheel, or the light bulb, or the autonomous vehicles, every single one of these inventions were the result of someone or some team having a curious mind. So be proactive, think about that in the short term, but also the long term. So in the short term, being proactive means if you have a spare 5 minutes in your hour, don't go on Facebook. Don't go on your mobile and start swiping left and swiping right. Right? Actually read an article, share an article, write an article, develop a point of view. You can also be proactive in the long term as well. All of you here are the CEO and executive chair of your own company, and that's brand you. No one has your best interests at heart more than you yourself. You need to stand up, you need to develop a plan and be proactive. Focus and be present. Now imagine going on a date with someone, right? And that whole time on the date, that person just was distracted. They didn't look at you. They're on their phone all the time. None of us are that important where we need to be online. We need to be checking emails 24/7, even in meetings, even in client meetings I've seen that, right? Show them the respect as a human being and give them your 100% full attention. So be present both physically, but also psychologically as well. Don't be a devil's advocate, be an ideas advocate. An innovation advocacy matrix. You can have people on the left who are closed-minded, open-minded, / curious, proactive. And down here, people who are passive. The devil's advocate will be passive in their aggressiveness, but they will still try and take you down. They'll say, that idea, that won't work for this reason. They won't actually build the idea. They won't say, how about this? Or how might we? Or yes, and. In other words, they're not an ideas advocate. An ideas advocate will embrace your idea or your concept and say, all right, well, have you thought about this? So they're going to be proactive and open-minded to support you. People over here, the detractors, stay away from them. And people over here are head nodders. Head nodders will say, yeah, I like the idea, but they won't lift a finger to actually help you achieve it. Learn how to be a good public speaker. Think about 3 things: strategy, story, presentation. So the strategy is, who is your audience? What are you trying to say? What are the key messages that you want to impart on them? You need to get that right. The strategy of your talk. Then there's the story, and the story is piecing together the pieces of data, the anecdotes, the results, the insights, and then, and only then, once you've got your strategy and your story right, do you focus on the act of delivery, which, for argument's sake, I'm going to call a presentation, right? But again, a presentation is not a PowerPoint. A presentation is the act of delivering a message. Now, most people, especially in our industry, in the media industry, most people, when they need to prepare a client meeting or a pitch or whatever it is, they jump straight to the presentation part. They say, well, what slides do we have? Is embrace Kaizen, the Japanese word, spelled Kaizen. So Kaizen, the continuous focus on incremental improvement. Coming out of World War II, the ashes of World War II, the Japanese manufacturing industry needed to compete the game on the world stage. So very famously, Toyota created a philosophy called the Toyota Way, which is basically Kaizen. They said you could have the perfect sales record, or you could have the perfect manufacturing line, or the perfect supply chain, but there's always ways that we could either cut costs or that we can improve efficiency even by 5%. In our society, we actually have a bit of an opposite culture sometimes. You've all heard of the saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Guess what Encyclopedia Britannica did in 1995? They had that same philosophy too. They said, well, our business model isn't broken, so why do we need to worry about digital disruption? Learn empathy. So empathy mapping, put yourself in the other person's shoes, and that could be your client, that could be your team, that could be your vendor, is about understanding their thoughts. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? What are their pains? What are their gains? What are they hearing? What's the dialogue that they're probably hearing in their day-to-day jobs or in their day-to-day lives? What are they seeing? What are they saying? What's the language that comes out of their mouth? And then why? And finally, what are their actions? What are they doing? Adopt and live the Dan values for your team. If you think about the company Virgin, Richard Branson's Virgin, they're sexy, they're energetic, they're creative. Can you imagine if he just hired people and they hired people who weren't fun and creative or focused on customer service? Well, the company will be a very different company to what it is today. So the same thing goes for Dentsu Aegis Network. But our values of pioneering and collaborative are super important to innovation into our world over here. The values of being agile is incredibly important as our industry is in the process of being disrupted. We're still only early on. Being ambitious goes hand in hand with what I just mentioned about being proactive and having a curious mind, but of course being responsible as well, not being reckless. Now, don't make the mistake of hiring just for intelligence or hiring just for experience. In the book Built to Last, he talks about the traits of a company that becomes successful. One of the traits is having a cult-like culture. Employees understand the culture, understand the values, and they're advocates of it. Managers, all of you, are single-handedly responsible for driving that culture. Those people that don't fit in with the values either leave or get pushed out. It's as simple as that. Every single successful company that has been built to last has a cult-like culture. Adopt a no dickheads policy. My favourite football team in Australia is the Sydney Swans. Now, back in the early 2000s, the Sydney Swans, they were a terrible team. They didn't have much money. They were only a relatively young team. And the coach at the time famously said, we're going to have a no dickheads policy. He didn't want any one person to necessarily stand out. He wanted it to be team unity. And so for the next couple of years, every single person that they brought on board to the team had to adopt that cult-like culture and had to be conformed to the values that he was trying to set that team. Toxic people, they're going to do so much damage to you and your team. They're going to make you feel frustrated, de-energized, bored. They're going to drag the morale, is build informal, connected networks. Now in 1955, in Montgomery, Alabama, Rosa Parks very famously sparked the civil rights movement. She was an African-American woman who didn't give up her seat in a segregated bus. There were hundreds of other people, not just in Alabama, but all around the country, who were independently resisting and protesting. But what was so special about Rosa Parks? Why did she spark the civil rights movement overnight and not all of these dozens of other people? Rosa Parks belonged to several dozen informal connected networks. A church group, she belonged to a cooking group, a neighborhood watch group, a family group. The night that she was arrested, the next day, so the neighborhood watch group said, well, if the church group is marching, well, I'm going to march as well. And then all of a sudden, you had several hundred people who were mobilized, and their networks also mobilized as well. Broaden rather than deepen your network. There are 50 people in this room already. This is an amazing networking opportunity at the same stage of your career. And as you all grow as leaders, nurture these contacts, nurture these relationships, nurture these friendships. Define and live your life pillars. Back in 2008, I'd been in the UK for 4 years, and I was drinking a lot of alcohol, I was backpacking around Europe. I was living a really hard life. I was also really dedicated to my career, and they were my two pillars at that time. I had a family tragedy right at that time, and my sister, who was my best friend at the time, 7 years older than me, she tragically passed away from bowel cancer. I had known that her condition was deteriorating. She'd been ill for about 2 years. And so the selfless person would have gone home back to Sydney. But I didn't do that. I was selfish. And I wanted to continue partying hard. I had a great career, I had a great job. And I wanted to do that. So I came home eventually at the end of 2008, but it was too late. I barely spent 2 weeks with her. It made me reevaluate what is important to me. Career, health, relationships, and experiences. And they're 4 things that are important to me. So I'm going to challenge you to find out, to have a think, what is important to you? It might not be those things. It might be spirituality or your church. It might be family. It might be community. Whatever it is. Define what's important to you. And I call them your life pillars. Use this as a bit of a balancing framework for how you invest your resources. Invest things like time, your money, your energy, your emotions. So think about if you're spending way too much time on your career, but you're neglecting your health and you're neglecting your relationships and family, it's time to have a rebalance. Use it as well, use that framework to actually think about decisions. It's a decisioning framework. So for example, should I move to New York? So 5 years ago I had this big decision. Should I move to New York from Australia? Well, let's have a look. So is it going to impact my career? Yeah, it's going to be great for my career. Is it going to impact my health? And it's probably going to be, I'm going to drink even more, so it's probably not going to be great for that. What about my relationships? Well, I'm going to be leaving a ton of relationships back in Australia, but I'm going to be making a ton of new relationships here in New York. And is it good for my experiences? Absolutely, it's a great experience, so yes, I will do it. Should I take lots of drugs every single night and get up partying every 7 days a week? Good for my career? Hell no. Health? No. Relationships? Yeah, somewhat. It's a pretty amazing experience, but negative, so don't do that. Now I'm going to close with this. Our industry is experiencing disruption. We're just at the cusp. Now, all of you are at that stage of your career where you're probably still only 15, 20% max into your career. You're still at the early stages. What our industry needs is a future generation of leaders who's actually going to drive this change and set an agenda for change and define what our industry is going to be over the next 5, 10 years and beyond. So my question to you is this. Are you going to be the leader that's going to sit there passively? Or are you going to be that leader that's actually going to stand up and drive this agency and drive this industry forward? Because if it's not you, who else is it going to be? Thank you.